Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm JC Cadet with Atlanta Ventures and co-producer alongside Jon Birdsong. In today's episode, Jon sits down with Cherie Kloss, founder of SnapNurse. After spending 10 years as an anesthetist, Cherie transitioned careers to be a TV producer and then a technology founder. Through the personal pain she experienced finding, scheduling, and getting paid as a healthcare worker, Cherie started a software company, learning how through online education and YouTube videos. Today, SnapNurse generates over $1 billion in revenue and is one of the fastest growing companies in the country. In today's interview, Cherie shares stories on how she came across the idea and opportunity to found SnapNurse, what lessons she teaches her children to make them more entrepreneurial, major trends and transitions occurring in the nursing industry, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story.
Cherie Kloss,
yes.
Welcome to the Atlanta Story podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you taking time. Before we get into the story of SnapNurse and all the success that one has read about in the papers, would love to know, did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, it's always been in my blood. And, I did take the safe route and head into the medical field, just like a good Asian, daughter would do. But, found myself being, rather bored.
Yes.
And really wanted to dip my toe in things. And that's when the real entrepreneur spirit kicked in and started multiple things.
So grew up in California?
Yes, Los Angeles. Yes.
Los Angeles. And then what sort of direction did you have to go to medicine? I mean, what was it just your parents saying, "Hey, you got to go to med school," or that sort of guidance?
Yes, definitely. Growing up, it was either going to medicine or engineering, right? That was considered the epitome of success in my community. Wasn't that great in math, so I decided to go down the science route, and yes, I really wasn't given much of a choice. I mean, I would say I wanted to do other things. I wanted to go in TV. I wanted to do movies, and of course, it was just shot down, by my parents. So I kept going down the route and eventually ended up at Emory University School of Medicine and worked as an anesthetist for 17 years. 17.
Real quick, if you wanted to raise students or kids to be entrepreneurial, what would you do today?
Well, my kids are a good example of that. They're just one's about to graduate and the other one's in college.
Okay.
And they are going to college and studying a field that they enjoy. I encourage them to find a really good internship and, work at that company for a little bit and really understand the business and then launch their own. And that seems to be the track they want to do as well, having seen me do my own thing as well.
Nice. So we'll get into some of the higher ed conversations in a little bit. So I read 10 years as an anesthesiologist, but you said 17.
Yes, 17 years as an anesthetist.
I'm sorry, anesthetist, excuse me.
But yes, 17 years, of which 10 years I was full-time, and 7 years I worked part-time trying to get all these different ideas out of my head and try to get them to fruition. So I worked gig work, which is just contract work going from place to place. I worked at 11 different locations. And at that time is really contract work, or PRN work is what they called it, going from place to place. And that's where kind of the inspiration for SnapNurse came.
Got it. So there's hundreds of people today, thousands of people who have that kind of idea in the back of their head at their current day job. What made you different to go chase that? What trigger did you have in your head that said, I'm going to go do this?
I think it just became an issue of complete boredom. And I looked at someone that we were doing anesthesia, and I watched a really old lady push a stretcher that was an anesthetist with her walker. And I looked at that and I said, that's not going to be me. I know I got these golden handcuffs, but I am not going to be doing that. I just couldn't imagine another 20 years of doing the same thing.
Yes.
And really was out of knowing that my life would be complete drudgery if I didn't just start something else. And that's where I started to dip my toe into reality television, which became a 7-year career.
So let's talk about that. Was there anything that in your story and your just love of movies, love of TV shows that you just said, I'm going to go dedicate my life to this now? And then 2-part question, how did you transition from that? Did you guillotine, or did you kind of have, one foot in one industry and one foot in the other and slowly transition?
Right. So I didn't guillotine. I did have, because I was a single mom with 2 kids and they were very young, I had to keep my foot in anesthesia to keep the lights on and the roof over their head. And meanwhile, I tiptoed around in the TV industry.
And what year was this?
What year was this?
07?
Yeah, probably 07-ish.
Okay.
Right before the reality TV boom. It just started.
Yes.
And I would say
Survivor. I mean, this was
all of that. Yeah.
What Trump's Apprentice. You had
all the redneck shows. The redneck shows were really big at the time. Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty.
Pawn Shop, and all those things. So, I would say that a lot of my success has to do with timing.
Okay.
And that's what people really forget, is they could have a really good idea, but the timing of the market is really important. And so if you come too late to the market, someone's already gotten the market, it's probably not a good idea. But with reality TV, it was just kind of blooming.
Sure.
And I was made an introduction to a TV producer that worked at A&E Network. And I weaseled my way into asking him, hey, please, tell me what you're looking for in terms of redneck characters. And I live in the South. He goes, oh, you live in the South? All right, well, we're looking for any redneck shows. Like, find us some characters. And then that became me.
That was your first job, their first task in production.
Is find redneck characters.
Okay, so where'd you go?
Mostly Alabama. Alabama's rich in redneck characters. They're also, full of life. And one of the shows was called Bamazon, which is Alabama guys mining for gold in the Amazon jungle. Bamazon.
Yes, makes total sense.
And then Backyard Oil was Kentucky guys, it's on Discovery Channel, digging for gold, oil.
Yes.
And then, of course, Hitting It Rich or Not Hitting It Rich. And then for Sci-Fi Channel was Town of the Living Dead, which is also played in Jasper, Alabama, about a small town making a zombie movie, arguably the worst zombie movie ever made.
So were you a contractor? Did you start your own company? And did it transition full-time from the quote-unquote golden handcuffs?
Yes. So in the beginning, it was a lot of mentorship with the TV production company I was working with. And so I wasn't taking any money. I just helped them out. And then they gave me a little bit of money later, and then it became a lot of money later.
Wow, you must have been really passionate for the first couple of years to do that, Yeah,
it was, I really wanted to do something different, and that was really different.
Yes.
And it was really fun, too, so.
Did you have a big long-term goal in mind, like you wanted to be the next major producer, or was it something that you're just like, this looks fun and I'm going to go just chase this desire?
I guess I had a less, I never wanted to be a huge producer, but I did want to have a big hit show.
Okay.
And that was the continuous hunt for that big hit show. And while I did land on some very large networks, nothing hit quite like Duck Dynasty, you know. Which those are the ones that are big, make the big money makers. You have to get past season 1, which is really hard to do. So when I started to see my kids not watching television anymore. And I said, hey, I was telling the producers, hey, people aren't watching TV anymore. My kids aren't watching TV. And this time I was very successful. I had 8 shows go to network air.
Wow.
And I had 38 deals. And it was, this time I was getting paid as a full producer.
Yes. And that's pretty good money.
Yeah, it was good money. Definitely good money. Yeah, you get a percentage of each show. And like the producers usually get 10% of budget of each show. And then you get a salary. And so it definitely was more than I was making in anesthesia. Okay. And so I did quit anesthesia, was doing TV full time this time. And
that career was 8 years, 10 years?
Yeah, it was about 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 7, 8 years.
So but 07 to 15.
Right. And then when I started getting paid like further and further and further, was just always a bad sign.
Wow.
That time to leave. That's when I realized, everything I saw like 3 years previous with my kids not watching TV. I said, you guys, it's going online. Everything's going online. Netflix. And they said, oh, that's such junky that's just junky content. Everyone's talking about that. And I said, okay, well, I'm telling you, I think there's going to be a big shift here.
What other signals did you see besides, right in front of you, your kids? What tidbits in the market did you see?
I saw those reality shows that were getting, 7 million viewers are suddenly getting 1 million viewers.
Yeah.
And that 2 million viewers was considered a huge hit. And that was a big shift.
And you were like, back in 2007, 2008, these numbers would have been laughed at.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably would have been canceled. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're getting 500,000 views, then, or, people watching, they might even consider, okay, well, maybe.
Why do you think the other producers didn't sound the alarm and see that?
I don't know. I mean, I think they probably all had discussions. I'm not going to say I'm the smartest person in the room. There were people in there having discussions. I think that they were really consumed with what they were doing in the present. And so there was very little time to think about the future.
Sure.
And then, when the future hit them in the face, then they suddenly got HBO Max,
Right.
And they have all these, extensions of their channel. But it was, it definitely saw the money pulling away from TV and going online.
So 2015, you're seeing this, and all of a sudden, you look around and you're like, okay, well, I see the writing on the wall a little bit, and then you iterate and evolve for your third career.
That's correct. Yeah, I went to my brother who lived in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I said, I need to get out of this. This is sinking Titanic, here.
and you're making good money.
Yeah, but I just know this thing is not iterating and it's not becoming the future. And I always want to be part of the future. Mm-hmm. And he says, okay, the future is tech then. You need to do a tech startup. And he was all fired up. He had 100 links of self-education links that you could look at, which I think a lot of people don't know. You can actually just educate yourself to become an entrepreneur through Harvard and Stanford. I mean, there were all this free content that were just literal lectures. In
open courseware.
Yeah, so much. You learn from the best, too. You learn from people who made Dropbox and, Airbnb, and you're just learning from all these huge entrepreneurs. And it's all free.
It's amazing.
I couldn't believe it's all free.
Does that go over your kids' head when you tell them that, or do they pay attention?
I mean, I kind of force them to listen to a lot of it, like when we're on long trips.
Yeah.
Like play the thing. Oh, no, another TED Talk, But yeah, they definitely have seen the journey and the struggles. So they know what they would be in for if they started a business. But yes, I like them to listen to all of those things. And I even took my daughter to the Ernst & Young EY Entrepreneur of the Year because I won last year the Nationals. And they had all these amazing speakers, and exposing them to the speakers and having them, learn. So I think they're going to have it in their blood too.
So that list of 100, resources, most of them YouTube, and interviews with successful entrepreneurs on how they did it. And
books.
And how did you put a process together to create your own curriculum?
Well, I started with the Sam Altman series, which was, I think it was like 17 hours or something like that from Stanford, which was excellent. I mean, they just map it all out. I think he might be with Y Combinator.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so that's free. And then I started with all the books that they would recommend and followed through with, 0 to 1, Hard Thing About Hard Things, just
Lean Startup.
Everything. Yeah, all of those things by Eric Ries and all the recommended podcasts and things to tune into. So really just followed what the, all the YouTube people were saying to read.
And are you doing this from 9 to midnight as you're still the producer? Walk us through the transitory nature of the role from like a just time allocation perspective.
Right. So I, this whole time that I was a TV producer, I didn't want to lose my medical license because I just didn't really know when that was going to ever just bust up.
Yeah.
So this is why I worked a day here, a day there, about 4 days a month, just going place to place, 4 to 6 days, just to keep it active and keep understanding and what
Staying
newest
present.
drugs were and things like that. So I actually went back to anesthesia doing just contract work. I just left TV because it was getting difficult with the payments not coming in. And I said, I don't want to keep working, and waiting for 6 months to get paid. I'm just going to just cut it off and go and, do something else. So I went back to anesthesia, just part-time, and just studied as if this was my new career is tech. And I studied as if I was in school. And then I said, well, what I want to do is I want to make this process, thinking about what idea to put into motion, this process of me working at 11 different locations and all the headache that is. I mean, I had to carry manila folder full of credentials or fax them and then arrive to have all my personal information just poured onto the floor, from the fax machine. And all the missed voicemails that I get, and then not really knowing where the location was I'm supposed to be at the next day. Lots of miscommunication. I said, okay, this is what needs to be tightened up.
Yes.
And at the time they were doing a lot of Uberizing of everything, but I didn't know, I knew it couldn't be the straight Uber because that's just not how medicine doesn't work that way. Whereas lots of people that were mostly tech focused went into the marketplace trying to make an Uber for nurses. And I knew, that's going to fail and that's going to fail. In my mind, I knew really the inside baseball of healthcare staffing because I had to deal with it so much going to so many different locations. And so that is where I said, well, I'm going to do this platform where it's going to be easy to view a nurse, select them whether or not you want them to be in your internal pool of people you want to send out messages to or bookings to, and then allow them to message those nurses to fill empty shifts.
So that was from idea to you mapped out the first, let's call it 5 features, right? So you said select nurse.
Or MVP,
Yeah, MVP. Put it in your pool, and now you've got a trusted group of nurses that you can call on and schedule.
That's correct. Yeah. It started off with a very simple credentialing platform where they can view the resumes, and after they book, they can actually download the full credentialing file. So it was really self-service. The facility can go in, create a booking, and then view the nurses that they can send it to, then select which ones they want to send it to. Then the nurses get notification that they can accept or decline, and then they're put into the nurse manager's calendar, and then the nurse can download first day instructions. So it was all done automatically. In fact, we only had one guy that actually managed the platform of all the bookings that were happening.
How did you go about building it?
I first had a big mess in the beginning because I didn't really know what I was doing. And I'd hired people that had a really good resume, but that doesn't necessarily, mean that they can build technology, and actually blew about $100,000 making a technology that couldn't scale. It actually can only scale to like 10 people. And it was like cycling. And I said, this doesn't work. This is bad. So I asked someone to make me an introduction to Edwin Marcial.
Yes.
Who's a founding CTO of ICE.
Yep.
And I had him come to the office, and he says, oh, yeah, no good. Don't fire them yet, but you're going to have to fire them. Well, as soon as he left, I fired them all, And he said, I told you not to fire them yet.
When you make a decision, it sounds like you make it pretty final and quick.
Yeah. And then now you put me in a bind. I got to hurry up, find you a team. And he did. He found me some people from ICE that had worked there in the past that no longer worked there.
Did you have a set budget in your mind of like, hey, I'm going to put X dollars into this company? And how did you view the budgeting process in the early days?
In the early days, we were able to raise, $1 million very quickly. It's all friends and family. And someone said, you got some rich friends and family. Within like 30 days, you raised the money, which was why I say, you really need to lean in on your own network, because there are programs that you can do pitch contests and stuff, but that might take a while versus just going out and just pitching people your idea. And they have to really understand your idea. So if it's in medicine, hit up your relatives or friends of your relatives that are doctors, or, that
Yes.
kind of thing. So that really understand the space. I go, oh yeah, I want to invest in that. So we took that budget, and then we had, a proper CFO who outlined how much we can spend in each department, and then we scaled accordingly. But the most important thing we did is to try to get revenue immediately. And so we had gone to market with a kind of a jerry-rigged, it was a gym, like you book like gym memberships through, and it was just a white-labeled kind of very simple booking. And we created a quick, a credentialing platform, went to market. And because I knew Atlanta really well, I had a lot of facilities signed up. Then I just had to get a lot of the nurses in the same area, and I had immediate bookings.
So you immediately saw that authentic demand in the product, even though you hadn't even built it. You just used a white label, hacked it together.
Yep, I hacked it together. And it's so funny because I remember large hospital here in town. I probably shouldn't mention the name. But we went in there.
There's a few of them.
They said, this is amazing. I said, oh, okay. Wait till you see the real product, And then when we built the real product, then we did a quick, hey, your app is going to look different, just know it's going to look different. And the next day it was like completely our, app. So
this was 2018?
Yeah, this is 2018 when we launched our app. Yeah, our proprietary one.
So go out, visit your brother in 2015. He says, hey, read all of this, go educate yourself. Yeah. And then 3 years later, you've not only found a market with authentic demand, but you've got paying customers who are using the product.
That's correct.
That's remarkable.
2016, I did all the self-education. 2017, I started the company and raised some money. And then we started building the platform. And then 2018, we launched.
How'd you come up with the name?
I had some advice in the TV industry that said,
it's SnapNurse.
Yeah, that said, because in TV, when you you can sell TV very easily if you just figure out what sells at the other network and then change it slightly so it feels familiar, but it's still different. And for some reason, people gravitate toward that because they feel like they already recognize it.
Sure.
And there's a brand kind of immediate trust there. So I knew that people kind of, at the time, Snapchat was really big. And I said, okay, they're going to think this is cool. This is the newest thing. I'll just call it SnapNurse. And my kids thought that was the worst name in the world. That's so stupid. Why are you copying Snapchat? Like, I'm not copying Snapchat. I'm just saying that it's a catchy thing, like SnapNurse, like book a nurse in a snap.
Yeah.
Was the slogan. And it felt very fast.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. Check out our website to access many resources, including free tools and guides to start a business, a calendar of our upcoming events hosted at Atlanta Tech Village, and a lot more content around building companies. Let's transition gears to the healthcare industry in general. In terms of my wife and I were who's in healthcare as well. We were talking last night just about this interview, and there's the healthcare industry has obviously changed a lot over the last 3 years in terms of staffing needs, traveling nurses. How has COVID impacted the staffing industry and then healthcare as a whole?
So COVID did a couple things. First, we had a nursing shortage before COVID.
Yes.
Right? We all know the aging baby boomers were causing a strain on the system. Nurses were retiring at an extremely alarm rate because they tend to be, in the olden days, like where I come from, let's call it if you were born in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, your counselors would say, what do you want to be, a teacher or a nurse? And we had a lot of people. I think every one of my high school friends became a nurse. And they were really pushing nurses, pushing them to go into nursing. And they're just not doing that anymore. So you have less people going into nursing, and combined with the people that are retiring from nursing. And then in COVID, 20% of the nurses quit completely. Right. They just said, retired early, or said, this is not worth the money. I'm not doing this anymore, not worth my life. And then another additional 20% went into doing contract nursing, or travel nursing, they call it. And so I say with the mindset of the whole, kind of universe of gig economy mindset, it did translate into healthcare. And people was like, well, I want to work wherever I want, when I want. Yep. And they started to, during the pandemic, have unlimited opportunities to do that. Not only did they not have to really travel far to do it, but they could work in their own backyard doing gig work. So they didn't really have to travel anymore. That's kind of an old word of saying really contract nursing. So it shifted a lot to contract nursing because, the different states were offering different amounts of pay. Yes. And they could just go wherever they wanted because during that time, they were just completely lowering all of the credentialing requirements in terms of state licensing.
Got it.
That used to take months, like 6 months to get into California, where now it's like immediately put the name on the list, they get the emergency license, and they're working in California. And it was really glorious, honestly, because for the first time, and I've seen, from a career of 17 years, I've seen everyone work collaboratively through the government to get the care they needed, which is super controversial, I know, but the government was facilitating care to where it was needed the most. And because of that, places like Louisiana or Mississippi were able to get care
because nurses would come in.
Because they were able to subsidize nurses from using government money to say, don't go to California, come to Mississippi,
So I want to bring it back to the overall nursing trends, but let's just walk through SnapNurse's 18, 19, 20, 21 revenues, because it's probably the fastest growing company in that period. I think I read 150,000%. So 18, you got first couple paying, or 17, 18, you got first couple paying customers, and then walk us through just some of those numbers.
Right. So we, as I said, just like with reality TV, the reason I was successful is I hit it right at the right time where I could just throw anything on. Hey, how about this idea of, 10,000 miles away from civilization, a band of brothers, XYZ, Yes. And it was, yeah, that sounds great. Do that today and no one's going to take that pitch. Okay. So same with SnapNurse. So we had built the technology 18. I would call it a million revenue or so. Then 19 was 3 million in revenue. But the platform was what we were focusing on, really honing the platform, making it easy for nurses to sign up, and then quickly processing them to turn it around quickly.
And you were going and selling to all the different locations.
Yeah, we were selling into the hospitals and mostly going region by region.
Cool.
So we were in Atlanta, and then we were in California was our second market.
Nice.
And so we had a really unique database because everyone on our database could work on demand. That means the next day, right? Because they were that's how we started as a PRN platform that can be booked on demand. Yep. So as we curated this giant pool, I think that time we had about 100,000 nurses.
That's amazing. That's truly like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. Well, we also paid our nurses every single day at the end of every shift. And that was really important because when I was working as a contractor, I always picked this one center that paid me a paper check at the end of every shift, even though it was $5 less an hour. And that mentality, it wasn't that I was living day to day. It's just I wanted to get paid immediately.
Wow.
And so the first thing that we built at SnapNurse was the ability to put it in a time card and get paid at the end of your shift. And in the beginning, we used like Cash App, PayPal. There was like nothing. We just jerry-rigged this.
Totally.
But then we developed a really strong relationship with Stripe and then have a fully integrated platform that we made with Stripe. And that's how we're going to pay so many people now, at scale. And so
18, about 3 million, 19.
Yeah, that's right. And then in 20,
the world changes.
Yeah, starting to really ramp up. We were getting really big orders. Still slowly starting to change. I don't think it was at full tilt yet in 20. It was the first wave, I think, was in 20. So we ramped up to about, I think it was 800 million. And then 2021 was 1.2 billion. And then of course this year we're growing as well. And so I would say that the biggest, scale went from 800 to a billion. That was our hardest scale up because it's easy to scale when you're tiny. It's harder to scale when you're bigger.
How many employees today? I know it's
500 employees.
Yeah, for SnapNurse.
We're just internal.
Right.
Yeah. I think, it's around 400 or 500.
So let's transition back to the entire. By the way, those numbers are incredible. Congrats. Let's transition back to the industry as a whole, because there still is a shortage today. Where do you see nursing going 5 years, 10 years from now?
So this is super controversial, but I'm going to...
That's why we run a podcast. Go on.
I'm just going to say it. You can knock me down if you want to, but I believe it's going to be a pure platform play, and it's not going to be what you see today. For example, you see a lot of online platforms that are kind of like staffing agencies. They're staffing agencies. They still have the same staffing agency model that's digitized, right? So you have online credentials, you have online booking, but at the end of the day, it's still staffing. Yep. The next iteration, if you think about it, has to be totally disruptive, and that is going to be that there'll be a model surrounded on the world of credentialing, and that there would be universal credentialing nationally, and that's because the shortage is going to get so dire that they're going to have to do that. in order to get the nurses they want. They're going to say, okay, forget it. I'm not going to ask for this license. Just, you can come to this state and any state. And it's already somewhat facilitated in several states already, but I think it's going to just become bigger. Like all the states are going to say universal state licensing.
Right.
Okay, so that's step one.
And then how do you get that?
Step two is getting them all on one database.
Watch all of these YouTube videos.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then three is, the most controversial thing is that it has to be a neutral body. It can't be like owned, like it could be like Salesforce, or it can't be like Oracle or something. It has to be owned as a neutral body. And I think it's going to be the government.
Yeah. Yeah. So does SnapNurse now ramp up its lobbying budget?
Well, the thing is, the agencies or the models that exist today, even the online ones, they'll still be able to plug into this. So it's not going to go obsolete. But who the big winner, I think eventually the government will have to step in and do something about it, because there's not been, I don't see any solutions, ending up trying to increase more nurses in the workforce. I don't see anyone retraining, en masse force. For example, SnapNurse has a program where we take med-surg nurses, which are just right out of college, and then try to train them in the higher specialties. And that way, that's where all the shortages are, the ICU, the ER. But, you can only do that so many at a time, where they really need huge government programs to do that if they want to get that forward. They also need to shorten, I think they need to shorten the nursing education and then make it more practical, rather than trying to teach them, anatomy in every kind of muscle in your leg. They don't really need to know that. Sorry. They just need to know, how do you put an NG tube in? What does this EKG mean? And they need to decrease that down and allow people to get certified quicker and get into internships quicker.
Yep.
And then mobilize them. So
let's go back to a more vulnerable topic, at least vulnerable for me. Millions of people right now have an idea and they're trying to get it funded, right? You went to friends and family, raised $1 million because of their belief in you. Can you walk us through the fundraising process of after that $1 million? And then, it takes revenue plus funding to scale from, 3 to 1.2 billion in 4 years. Talk to us about some of your, the journey of fundraising.
Right. So in the early days, you're continuously fundraising, whether it's, 200,000 here, 500,000 there. You're always continuously trying to find people to keep your lights on. We never had a great success with venture capital because we were either too early in the stage or too late in the stage. Yeah. We'd missed it because we went so fast. And so that was always difficult. Plus, that process takes a while. It's 2 to 3 month process before they'll actually write a check. And by that time, a lot of startups will be in severe, dire red zone. So you have to quickly find people that write checks quickly. We've only raised $17.4 million total in the history of SnapNurse.
Wow!
Because that's we always stayed profitable, and we actually don't need any investment.
Yeah.
At all, because we were profitable even.
I liked your point about getting to revenue quickly.
That's right.
Right. And then wrapping software around it.
Right.
Which is a great way to fund a business.
Right. So we always relied on our investor pool that we had for the initial round. And then we asked them to reach out to their friends or anyone they know that's interested. And then someone brought in a family office. And so that's where we got into 10 million. And then that led to the total of 17.4. But that was, the last round was in 2020.
Right.
And we really relied on credit lines. And we would be $3 billion if we had the proper credit line.
Really?
So it was very hard to get credit lines.
Let's talk about where the future is going for SnapNurse and where you want to take it.
Well, that's interesting. And so this year, I am actually stepped down as CEO. I'm sure you guys know that.
Yes.
So we're in the search for a CEO. And it was really part of my idea also is to bring in someone that could take the company public or can do a lot more M&A, with the cash that we have.
Yes.
And that those were skills that I didn't have. And I think it's really important for a person or a founder to understand what their limitations are and, how to grow value in their company. And sometimes that means it's not you.
So how do you balance that? If you take that mentality, though, back when you were in healthcare the first time, then it was like, well, would you even go into production? Or when you were in production, would you even go into software? Like, I'm trying to understand that dynamic of there doesn't seem to be limiting beliefs, but it sounds like this is more just playing to your strengths. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. I think that at some point, you know who you are, right? And when you get it to this size, in the beginning, it was a startup, it was innovative, it's growing, and you're at a big size now. And at that point, it needs different skills. It needs infrastructure.
Right.
It needs CEOs that want to build slow but steady growth. It involves HR. It involves like so much
all this stuff that just like it sounds like
just
a lot of check boxes and bureaucracy and things that.
For me, that was not what I wanted to do. And also the board felt that was important to bring in someone too. So it was, a board decision, kind of like a little bug I placed in their ear. And I said, okay, well, let's move this to the next level, and then I'll be free to go do other things.
Yes, very prescient.
So I'm just relying on the next CEO to guide that in the next direction. I'm not really going to tell them what to do because they probably won't listen to me anyway. So I just gotta. I don't know what's in that left for SnapNurse, but I'm sure it's something great.
So let's talk about a couple things. One, what are those other things that you go do?
Well, I'm looking at a lot of different startups that I think are the future of, and it may not in staffing, but in healthcare, to make it things that I've learned along the journey of SnapNurse. I think, this would be a huge disruption to the space, or this is a really interesting piece of technology, in the home care space, or I look at all these different projects going on and not only provide my investment, but also advice and help. And then, one day there'll be something that really catches my eye, and then I'll probably go and do it again.
Right.
It's just right. And then I'll do a lot of things differently. One, I won't get any investors. Two, I will not have a board. It'll just be me. And then three, I'm only going to work with people I like.
Yes.
And that's where I think if you talk to other founders, they are founders together as the same founding team over and over again.
Yes.
And that creates really successful startups over and over again.
Because they know how everyone works together and
each other's strengths. You know how to grow a company, and you take the best people. And so I just think that I'm going to probably do it again. I haven't found what I'm going to do again, but I know that I've got a really good eye. I've been going to a lot of conferences, and what's out there is pretty incredible.
Yes.
And I'm just
and
super
needed.
excited.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, the
needed.
healthcare industry is.
Yeah, and people have these high ideas, like, oh my gosh, it's so brilliant, and how can I help? Or do you need funding? And really, there's so many opportunities, and I evaluate, the founder first and foremost. A lot of things about the founder that I look for, and then I look for, is this really something you can sell?
Yeah.
And that's how I pretty much evaluate a business.
One of the articles I read about you in preparing for this brought up the term American Dream. How do you view that term, the American Dream? What does that mean to you?
Well, my father came from Korea. We were as immigrants from Korea, and he worked as a dishwasher. And I still remember as a young child him kind of talking about, oh yeah, this is America. In fact, he was so patriotic that he and my mother could barely speak English, but they only spoke English in the home, so that my brother and I would only speak English, and they didn't want to have an accent. And while that would be controversial today, back then it was because they were so thankful to be in the United States. And he went on to he tried to get into medical school. So I think he put all of his dreams and hopes on me. And he couldn't get in. So he ended up going to USC Film School, which actually is impossible to get in today, which is funny. And became an editor for, some things like Chips and those old 70s, I Dream of Jeannie and things like that. It's probably beyond your years. But
is that was like the nose wiggle?
Yeah, no. Yeah, those things. So he became successful, and from where he came, essentially. And then so we were able to see that, look what happens. You work hard. It's American Dream. You can get here. They give you education, and you could become this. So I would say that's really what happened to me. But then my father ended up getting a job in Korea, and I didn't want to go. So I stayed on my own, was emancipated at 15.
15?
Yeah. I stayed I was in the United States by myself at 15. And my younger brother went with my dad. And
wow.
Says, I'm not going. I'm staying in the United States. And I worked full time, and I lived in Venice, California, which is not the easiest place to live in back then. Then I got a scholarship to college, which felt like camp to me, compared to where what I had been doing, which is working full time, going to high school. And then at that point is when I started my anesthesia career, and et cetera.
So from all of your experiences, let's talk about higher education today, right? Because you've got one in school, or one in college, one in. Do you think, knowing all the careers you've had, all of the success, trials, tribulations, what is your view on higher education in general?
So I do think there are many different ways to reinvent your life, and that's actually, I'm writing a book about this.
Nice.
Because people always ask me, how did you do this? How did you do this? And how did you change your career so much? And so there's many different ways to change your life. One, you can change your life through education, which is the easiest pathway, right? Oh, I want to be a lawyer, or anything that requires a license. I want to be a physical therapist. I want to be a nurse. You get the education, and you end up being that person. But then you say, oh, I don't want to do that. How do I become something else? How do I go in the entertainment industry? Well, you can do that through mentorships, right? You can find a mentor who's really successful, who you can work for free, and then learn everything you can from them, and then get a small job with them, and then eventually become them, right? And that's how I did it in TV. So mentorship. And then third is you can do it through self-education, which is how I started my tech business, right? So you can basically, learn as much as you can for everything that's online, and books and other people who can teach you things, and then just do it based on that. If it doesn't require a license, you can be basically anything through that kind of platform. You'll be surprised what you can find online. I mean, pretty much, so many things. And then last, I would say, if you don't want to do any of those things, you could just put together a team. So, okay, let's just give that, say you want to make a movie. You don't know how to make a movie, but you could hire a producer to make a movie. Who knows how to make a movie? You could hire a director, you could hire a writer. You could hire all the people. And then basically you're a producer. And so, you just became a movie producer. Boom, And so that's where...
that's a very interesting perspective on that.
Yeah. So that's how you do it. I just gave you the whole book right there. So
yeah, you did.
Don't buy my book.
When's it coming out?
Well, I'm in the process of writing it now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cherie, we always end the Atlanta Story podcast with 2 questions. Why Atlanta, and what has Atlanta done for you?
So Atlanta has, I once moved to San Francisco in the middle of my startup, thinking, okay, I'm going to go to San Francisco because that's where I'm going to get so many contacts, and that'll help me in this industry, knowing that I got all that info from the area. And then I start to realize, well, this is no good. I'm separated from my team. I'm separated from all my friends. And you start to realize that just because a place is beautiful, like San Francisco is prettier than Atlanta,
Yeah.
Or you might have the vibrant tech scene. At the end of the day, it all boils down to your mental well-being and your connections that you personally have, not ones that you need to go and make. And where's your team? So I do believe in, especially the core team, being all in the same city and working together collaboratively in the office. I just think, I can't even imagine SnapNurse not starting that way, which we were there that way together until 2020 when we got forced to not be that.
Right.
But we had all that time together to build and understand each other's nuances. And so when I left, I felt very disconnected. SnapNurse did kind of suffer a little bit of, delay in revenue. I said, okay, I need to go back. So I moved back to Atlanta, worked in the office with everyone, grinded together, and I was happier because my friends were here, and I had all my investors that were all in Atlanta.
Right.
So it didn't make any sense to move, even though you think, I'm a tech entrepreneur, I'm going to Silicon Valley. You don't have to do that because you can create your own startup anywhere you are using Silicon Valley principles.
Yep.
You may not get the venture capital you want because technically they like to invest in people that are over there, and then East Coast invest in East Coast. But if you have a strong network of people and you can prove your revenue and you raise money at the right time, not when you're too big or too small, you can have your startup be anywhere.
Cherie, thank you so much for being on the Atlanta Story.
Thank you for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Cadet and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.